Hey everyone! Today I'm excited to share the remarkable journey of Juliette Fontain, a teacher whose life took a wild turn after a near-death experience that led her to discover unexpected truths about God, truths that stand in stark contrast to the teachings of traditional religions. Trust me, this story has so many unexpected elements you'll want to stick around. Before we dive in, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop your city in the comments. And hey, if you're not already part of our community, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated on similar content. So let me introduce myself. I'm Juliette Fontain, an elementary school teacher situated in the beautiful Flagstaff, Arizona. The events I'm about to recount unfolded over 30 years ago, yet it feels like just yesterday. To give you some context, I've always considered myself pretty grounded. I wasn't one to buy into ideas I couldn't see or touch. My life was simple. I taught my classes, hung out with friends, and took care of my home. Growing up, religion wasn't a big deal in my family. We'd attend church now and then, mostly out of obligation rather than genuine belief. As I gained more life experience, my skepticism only deepened. I was convinced that science had the answers to everything, and that anything beyond that was just fantasy. I remember a college debate vividly, where we discussed whether God existed. I passionately argued that it was a human construct, something people clung to when reality got too tough to handle. Little did I know that my perspective would be utterly transformed down the line. At that time, I was married to Gabriel, an incredible man with rock-solid faith. He often encouraged me to open my mind to spirituality. However, I'd roll my eyes at what I saw as his naivety. Life rolled on until one day, I spotted a small lump on the right side of my neck. Initially, I brushed it off, but as days passed, it became more prominent. Being a teacher, I worried about how it might affect my appearance. After all, confidence is key when facing a classroom full of children. I visited my physician, Dr. Theodore Langston, who reassured me that surgery wasn't necessary. Still, I was insistent. I needed to have it gone for good. It wasn't just about the health risks. My pride was on the line too, and the looming possibility of a goiter didn't sit well with me. After some negotiation, he finally agreed to schedule the procedure. Little did I know that this decision would set off a chain of events that would alter my life forever. It's funny how one simple choice can completely change the course of your life. The day of the procedure came, and I was filled with a mix of nerves and determination. As I lay on that operating table, staring up at the glaring lights above me, I could feel the anesthesia starting to take hold. Dr. Theodore Langston was right there, offering kind words to ease my mind. I closed my eyes, expecting to drift into a peaceful sleep and wake up a few hours later with my neck all bandaged up and that annoying goiter finally gone. But what happened next was nothing like what I'd ever read about in any medical book. Out of nowhere, I suddenly felt this intense pull, like something was yanking me out of my body. It was as if an unseen force was pulling me into an endless dark tunnel. The sensation was beyond words, like being sucked into a black hole at lightning speed. I was consumed by terror. I wanted to cry out, but I couldn't find my voice. I reached for anything to grasp, but there was nothing there, just a swirling blur, as if I were tumbling into an infinite abyss. It felt like time itself had vanished. Who could say if it was mere seconds or ages that passed? Then, just as abruptly as it all began, that dizzying fall ceased. I found myself enveloped in a warm, brilliant light, something I'd never felt before. It was as if the very air was infused with light. It didn't blind me. Instead, it wrapped around me like a cozy blanket. Slowly, my eyes adjusted, and I started to see shapes forming all around me. Before me was a slender bridge adorned with golden railings, shimmering brightly. This bridge stretched over a stream with water so clear it looked otherworldly. The gentle sound of flowing water soothed me, filling me with a sense of calm I had never known in my life. Confused yet fascinated, I took a step towards that bridge, and then realized I wasn't alone anymore. On the other side stood a figure radiating its own light. The closer I got, the more I could make out the details. There was this angelic being, like something out of a dream. Her long, golden hair floated gracefully around her. Her enormous, translucent wings glowed softly, as if they were crafted from the very same light that enveloped us. She smiled at me, And even though no words were exchanged, I just knew her name, Callista. Beside her, a group of boys in immaculate white shirts stood, their eyes shimmering with hope and joy. I felt an instant bond with each of them, as if I had been friends with them for a lifetime. It was a strange yet beautiful moment, steeped in familiarity and connection. It was during a pivotal moment in my life when I found myself in Flagstaff, Arizona, surrounded by Callista and a group of children, that everything I had held on to, my beliefs, my doubts, everything, suddenly felt trivial. I was confronted with an experience that couldn't possibly be explained by logic or reason. It challenged everything I thought I understood about life and death. Yet amidst this chaos, I felt more awake and aware than ever before. As I absorbed everything around me, an even stronger sensation surged through me. It felt as though the universe was peeling back its layers, exposing its most sacred truths. I was on the verge of a revelation that would drastically alter my perspective on God and existence itself. What unfolded next was truly astonishing. An indescribable force enveloped me, as if the very essence of the universe was unfolding in my presence. In that instant, I encountered a force so profound that it redefined the concept of divinity for me. It wasn't a figure with features or a booming voice from above. No, it was a presence filled with pure energy, an essence that resonated with everything around it. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming wave of love wash over me, encasing my entire being in compassion and understanding. Every dogma, every belief system I had encountered up until then seemed irrelevant compared to this experience. I came to the realization that no religious text, no philosophical argument could ever truly encapsulate what I was now feeling. The truth of the divine was altogether beyond our comprehension. It shook my skepticism to its core. For as long as I could remember, I had prided myself on my rational outlook. Yet here I stood, grappling with something that shattered all logic, but simultaneously felt like an undeniable truth about the universe. It was as if a curtain had been drawn back, allowing me a glimpse into what truly exists beneath the surface. I understood then that God was not a distant figure perched above us, judging our deeds. Instead, it was an all-encompassing force, a universal consciousness that permeated every inch of the cosmos. Every particle, every thought, every living being was part of this greater whole. And then came the most surprising realization of all. I, too, was woven into this fabric of consciousness. There was no real division between me and this divine essence. I was intricately connected to it all. As I drifted into this expansive state of being, it felt like I was connected to every single living thing, and even to the stars scattered throughout the universe. This overwhelming sense of togetherness wrapped around me like a warm blanket. In this profound moment, I grasped a truth I hadn't understood before. Life doesn't just end when we leave our physical bodies behind. Instead, I recognized existence as an endless stream of energy and awareness, always changing, learning, and evolving. Death, which once appeared to me as a solid boundary, was revealed as merely a transition, a shift into something different. I also came to see that the reason we exist is far deeper than I had previously thought. It isn't only about being born, living, and ultimately passing away. It's about our spiritual evolution, the expansion of our consciousness, and our role in the grand tapestry of existence. Every single choice, action, and thought ripples through the universe, affecting everything around us. In that moment, it became clear to me that love is the strongest force in the cosmos. Not the type of love that we usually define, like romantic or familial love, but rather a vast, unconditional love that permeates all existence. It's this love that binds the universe together and fuels the growth and evolution of everything. As this powerful experience began to fade, I felt utterly transformed. A part of me had shifted forever. I knew I wouldn't return to my former self. My whole perspective, my values, even my beliefs had undergone a radical change. Though I struggled to find the right words to express what I had just gone through, I felt a compelling urge to share this newfound truth with others. Just as I was trying to make sense of this monumental experience, something strange happened. Out of nowhere, an invisible force yanked me back. It felt akin to being thrust into a dark tunnel, except this time, it seemed as if I was being torn away from paradise itself. The speed of it all was beyond description. I felt like I was plummeting from an unimaginable height. Instead of panic, however, there was an overwhelming sense of loss. I yearned to scream, to plead, to linger in that serene place filled with understanding, but my voice was silenced. In the next instant, I found myself hovering above the operating room, a surreal moment that felt like watching a film where I was the lead character. Below me, I could see my own body resting on the operating table, while Dr. Langston and his team moved about in a state of frantic chaos. They seemed agitated, working with urgency. As I observed with a strange sense of detachment, I saw them struggling to stabilize me. The monitors emitted frantic beeps, and voices rose in urgency. "We're losing her," I heard someone exclaim. It was surreal to witness my own lifeless form, pale and still, while I felt an intense vitality coursing through me. That's when I heard something that threw me for a loop. It was my own screams. Not from the body lying there, subdued and unconscious, but screams that echoed from the very depths of my soul. It was a chilling sound, like every part of me was rebelling against being yanked back into the physical realm. The nurses rushed me to the infirmary, and even while I continued to scream, nobody seemed to hear, like my soul was still grappling with the reality of its existence, caught in a struggle between two realms. Gradually, I started to feel a strange tug pulling me back into my body. This transition was tough and disorienting. It felt awkward, like I was trying to squeeze into a suit that was 2 sizes too small. After the exhilarating sensation of soaring free, my consciousness was wrestling with the limitations of the physical world again. When I finally dragged my eyes open in the infirmary, it hit me. A storm of emotions swirled inside me. On one side, a deep-seated joy overwhelmed me, as if every cell was reveling in the miracle of life. Yet, intertwined with that joy was a profound nostalgia for the experience I had just endured, a longing that stabbed at my very essence. The nurses around me appeared both relieved and perplexed by my mixed reaction. I found myself smiling and crying simultaneously, unable to articulate the whirlwind of feelings that engulfed me. That's when the phone beside my bed started ringing. The nurse picked it up, and after a brief chat, she turned to me with a look of surprise. "It's your mom," she said. "She wants to speak to you." Still in a daze, I grabbed the phone. As my mother's familiar voice filled the air, I was jolted back to reality. "I'm fine, Mom," I managed to say, even though fine felt like an incredibly weak way to describe my experience. While I tried to reassure her that everything was all right, my thoughts began to wander. How could I even begin to convey what had just happened? What words could capture an experience that slipped through the fingers of logic and reason? In that moment, I realized I faced a challenge far greater than just recovering from surgery. I would need to find a way to weave this extraordinary experience into the fabric of my everyday life. While I lay in the infirmary, lost in contemplation, a long-buried memory surged to the surface. It was as if that near-death moment had unlocked a door in my mind, paving the way for other inexplicable memories to flood back in. Lying in the hospital bed, an odd memory from my backpacking days in the 70s surfaced unexpectedly. I remembered a bustling city in Asia, its name now slipping my mind. Back then, I was trying to board a packed bus, surrounded by a cacophony of voices and the hustle of people rushing by. It felt chaotic, to say the least. Then, in the midst of that whirlwind, I heard it, my mother's voice. It echoed with a clarity that froze me in place, calling my name, just like she used to when she sensed I was about to get hurt. "Juliette!" she cried out with that same urgent concern, and without giving it a second thought, I instinctively clutched my backpack to my chest. In the next moment, I felt a jolt. A man sprinted by, his hands brushing against the spot where my bag, holding all my important documents and money, had been just moments before. At that time, I brushed off the incident, more focused on catching my bus rather than reflecting on what had just happened. But now, this memory struck me with unsettling clarity as I lay there recuperating. How on earth could my mother have reached out to me across thousands of miles? Was it possible she possessed some kind of intuition or psychic insight that I had never grasped? I started to recall other moments when she seemed to know things she shouldn't have, little occurrences I had long attributed to mere coincidence or imagination. Suddenly, in light of my recent brush with death, those memories took on a weight I hadn't anticipated. I couldn't shake off the thought that maybe there was a deeper connection between us, something that surpassed the physical realm. Did my mother have access to that spiritual plane I had only glimpsed during my near-death experience? Those questions stirred a mix of emotions in me. I felt a deep longing to discuss it with her, to ask if she remembered that chaotic day in Asia or realized what she had done. Yet I worried she might think I'd lost my mind. Just days ago, I would have dismissed all of this as sheer nonsense. As I mulled over these thoughts, a nurse walked in and interrupted my spiral of contemplation. She was just there to check my vitals and see if I needed anything for the pain. I replied almost mechanically, my mind still tangled in that vivid memory from long ago. It struck me then, I was caught in a predicament. My near-death experience had revealed a world I had always denied existed, yet reconciling that with my everyday life felt daunting. As I lay in the hospital bed trying to wrap my head around everything I'd just gone through, I felt a surge of uncertainty. The nurse was fluffing my pillow and it hit me. Once I was home, I absolutely had to sit down with my mother. There were so many things left unanswered, countless mysteries that begged to be untangled, and maybe, just maybe, she could shed some light not only on my recent experience, but also on this strange bond that seemed to have deepened between us. Throughout the day, a whirlwind of emotions took hold of me. I was excited about the revelations I had made, yet there lingered a gnawing fear of what else lay ahead. What else would I unearth about myself? About my family? About this vast world we live in? It was as if my eyes were now wide open, revealing new possibilities everywhere I looked. Once I finally left the hospital, I'd hoped to slip back into my routine, to find my life returning to the familiar. But deep down, I knew that was wishful thinking. Something had shifted inside me during that surgery, something I couldn't pretend wasn't there, no matter how hard I tried. Instead of welcoming this new viewpoint, though, I made a choice that I now recognize as a significant error. I doubled down on my skepticism, adopting an even more rigid, atheistic approach than before. It felt like a defensive maneuver, an attempt to compensate for what I'd experienced, reaffirming my rationality with an almost desperate intensity. I threw myself into my daily life. Sports became my obsession. I ran every morning, taught classes, graded papers, and meticulously planned lessons. I stayed so busy that I hardly had a moment to breathe, believing that if I kept moving, I could keep those troubling memories and questions buried deeply. Gabriel, my husband, was the complete opposite. He encouraged me to embrace spirituality, seeing my experience as a validation of his beliefs in life after death. Yet every time he mentioned it, I would either change the subject or make a quick exit. I just wasn't ready to entertain those thoughts. One night, I remember finding myself alone in the bathroom, tears streaming down my face. When Gabriel discovered me, he wrapped his arms around me and asked what was wrong. I wanted so desperately to share my burden, to confide in him, but the words failed me. How could I articulate something I didn't fully understand? How could I describe an event that shook the very foundation of everything I'd ever believed? So I spun a tale about work stress. Beneath it all, I felt a disconnect. Gabriel saw through my facade, but out of respect for my silence, he chose not to press. He was always so patient, so understanding, even when I didn't deserve it. Years rolled by, and I became something of a caricature in my own life. At faculty meetings, I was known as the ultra-rational one, the person who always adhered to logic and facts. For years, I brushed off anything related to the paranormal, rolling my eyes at the idea of spiritual experiences. It was easier that way. Denial felt like a shield against the memories that haunted me. In the stillness of the night, when distractions faded, those memories returned, vivid and unsettling. I remembered the calm presence of Callista, an angelic figure who represented something far beyond my comprehension. Despite my efforts to suppress it, this past lingered like an uninvited guest. Nightmares became a regular part of my life. I found myself plummeting into dark voids or trapped in sinister spaces, desperately screaming for help, only to be met with silence. Each time I woke up, heart racing and sweat-soaked sheets drenching me, I wished Gabriel could rid me of these fears. He was a comforting presence, always there to soothe me, but the true nature of my torment was a secret I could never share. My near-death experience remained locked away, a hidden burden I hoped would vanish. But that experience was like a shadow, continuously lurking, waiting to resurface at the most inconvenient times. Reflecting on those years, I realize how much energy I wasted trying to ignore such a pivotal part of my existence. So many chances for growth slipped through my fingers out of fear of confronting the unknown. But as time taught me, some truths are relentless. They force their way into the light, regardless of how hard we push them down. It has now been 35 years since that fateful event, a lifetime spent in denial, pretending the past didn't exist. I became quite skilled at dodging discussions that might touch on anything spiritual. Yet, life has its way of redirecting us when we least expect it. One typical Sunday, while Gabriel was engrossed in a show, I sat nearby, focused on grading my students' assignments. Suddenly, his voice rang out, brimming with enthusiasm. "Juliette, you've got to see this!" I sighed, half-heartedly putting down my papers to join him on the couch. On the television, a middle-aged woman named Elizabeth Votto was sharing her own near-death experience. At first, I thought about drifting back to my work, mumbling some excuse, but there was a pull in her voice that held me captive. She talked about sensations and visions that mirrored my own experiences, the overwhelming light, the profound peace, the celestial encounters. It felt as if she was telling my story, igniting a flicker of recognition that sent my heart racing once more. My hands trembled as if something inside me was breaking free, like a door I had sealed tight for years was finally being pushed open. Memories that I had kept buried rushed back into my mind, washing over me with unsettling clarity. I could tell Gabriel noticed my distress. He grabbed my hand gently, concern reflecting in his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked. I couldn't find the words. Instead, tears began to fall, and I let them stream down my cheeks without a fight. After the interview wrapped up, we sat in silence for what felt like forever. Gabriel simply held me close as I cried, each sob releasing a mixture of relief, recognition, and liberation. For the first time in ages, I felt like I wasn't alone in what I had been through. In the months that followed, I dove headfirst into exploring spirituality and the afterlife. I devoured every book I could find, watched countless documentaries, and joined online discussions. It was wild. Each new piece of information built on my experience, slowly validating what I had felt. I discovered that I could think about my near-death experience without being overwhelmed by fear or uncertainty. It began to dawn on me that this journey wasn't just significant for me, but also for others navigating similar paths. I remember one night, completely absorbed in a book about near-death experiences. I lost track of time and ended up crying again. This time, though, they were tears of joy. When Gabriel woke up and found me, I smiled through my tears, saying, "I get it now. I truly understand what happened to me." I felt as if I was emerging from a long slumber, realigning my beliefs and values with this newfound awareness. Meditation became a regular practice for me, something I would have laughed at not long ago. But now it served as a bridge to that incredible peace I had felt during my near-death experience. Sure, it wasn't the same, but it helped me reconnect with the larger tapestry of existence beyond the tangible world. As my understanding of life and death evolved, so did my bond with Gabriel. I finally found the courage to share everything I had kept locked away. His support and acceptance were crucial for me during this transformative phase. With each revelation, I could feel the heavy burden of denial lifting, replaced by an exhilarating sense of freedom and purpose. Armed with this fresh perspective, I knew I had to face my past and weave it together with my present. It was time for reconciliation. It was a sunny Saturday in Flagstaff, Arizona, when I decided to have a heartfelt conversation with my mother about something that had been weighing on my mind for years, the incident from my travels in Asia back in the 70s. I found her in the garden, the sunlight dancing off the flowers, and I hesitated before I spoke. "Mom," I began, searching for the right words, "do you remember when I was traveling through Asia?" Her eyes lit up with curiosity as she nodded, prompting me to take a deep breath and delve deeper. "There was a moment when I could swear I heard your voice calling out to me, warning me of something dangerous. Do you recall that?" To my surprise, instead of shock, she offered a gentle smile, squeezing my hand. "Juliette, my dear," she said softly, I've always felt something unusual between us. That day, I had the most intense dream. I saw you in peril and found myself yelling your name. When I woke up, I immediately feared something terrible had happened. I was taken aback. Decades of skepticism about the unseen suddenly felt foolish compared to her acceptance of this extraordinary bond we shared. That conversation blossomed into hours of revelation. As we poured out our secrets, fears of being misunderstood had kept us silent for long enough. As we chatted, something shifted within me. I realized I had been denying a vital aspect of my identity all my life. There's so much about the universe that science hasn't unraveled yet, and that didn't lessen the importance of what we know. I decided it was time to embrace a more open mindset. In my social studies classes, I started introducing topics about spirituality and different worldviews, and it surprised me how eagerly my students engaged. They began sharing their family stories and personal beliefs. One afternoon after class, a student approached me with a visibly shaken expression. Tears glistened in her eyes as she recounted a near-drowning incident. She spoke of seeing a bright light and feeling a profound peace wash over her. "I've never told anyone about this," she confessed. "I was scared they'd think I was losing my mind." In that moment, it suddenly clicked for me. My experiences weren't just for my own understanding. They were about fostering a safe space for others to voice their own extraordinary moments as well. As I kept opening up, I realized I wasn't alone. People all around me had stories too. Neighbors, co-workers, even the local grocer. Everyone carried some hidden experience of the inexplicable. So I began hosting casual gatherings at my home, simple get-togethers where folks could share their tales without fear of being judged. Gabriel, my ever-supportive partner, helped me create an environment where everyone felt comfortable. It was heartwarming to witness these connections blossom. One evening, as I settled in for a chat with my husband Gabriel, he wrapped his arms around me and said, "You're finally at peace with yourself." His joy was infectious, and you know what? He was absolutely right. After years of battling my own thoughts and feelings, I finally felt whole. The tension between my logical mind and the mystical experiences I had endured was gone. I learned to accept both sides of who I am, realizing that rather than conflicting, they complement each other beautifully. Reflecting back on my life, I can't help but feel a blend of compassion and gratitude for that stubborn teacher I used to be. I remember grappling with fear and denial for so long, but I'm thankful for every moment that brought me to where I stand now. At 58, I feel more vibrant and connected to life than ever before. That near-death experience, which once consumed me with dread and confusion, has transformed into a cherished chapter of my story. It opened my eyes to the expansiveness of the universe, the interconnectedness of all living beings, and the importance of remaining open to life's mysteries. This personal transformation seeped into every facet of my life, including my work as an educator. I began to understand my unique role, how I could use my experiences to enhance what my students were learning. I started weaving discussions on philosophy, spirituality, and consciousness into my lessons, fostering an inclusive space for exploration rather than imposing my beliefs. To my delight, many students who had previously been indifferent now engaged enthusiastically. One day, I proposed a project, inviting students to interview individuals from diverse cultural and religious backgrounds about their views on the afterlife. The results blew me away. They returned not just with facts, but with a newfound respect for the rich variety of perspectives that exist in the world. It seemed my new approach in the classroom resonated well with many. When the principal of the school called me in, I braced myself for a reprimand. To my surprise, she complimented my efforts, saying, "Parents are telling us that their children are more engaged and reflective. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." At home, my relationship with Gabriel evolved beautifully. Our conversations grew deeper, becoming more meaningful. We found ourselves meditating together each morning, a practice that bonded us even further. One day he said, "It's like I'm discovering a new depth to my life." You know, it's funny how life can change in ways we never expect. I feel like I've married two versions of you, once to the Juliette I knew before, and then again to this amazing new version. Both sides of you hold a special place in my heart. As I delved deeper into my relationship with my mother, we began exploring the unique bond we share. I discovered that despite being miles apart, we could often sense each other's emotions. It used to frighten me, but now it's almost like a fascinating adventure. Of course, not everything was a walk in the park. Some friends from back in the day decided to distance themselves as they couldn't quite vibe with my new perspective. That hurt, but I've come to realize that it's just part of my journey. On the upside, I've also met some incredible new people who not only share my interests, but have really helped me to broaden my outlook on life. I even started giving talks to local groups about my near-death experience. Can you believe it? At first, I was a bundle of nerves, worried about judgment. Believe me, I used to be pretty skeptical myself. But to my surprise, the response was heartwarming. Many approached me afterward, often teary-eyed, expressing gratitude for voicing their own unshared experiences. One standout moment was when I was asked to speak at a medical conference on near-death experiences. I was taken aback by how many health professionals were eager to hear what I had to say. A neurosurgeon even approached me saying, "Your story has completely shifted my understanding of consciousness." How cool is that? As I gained recognition, researchers began inviting me to participate in scientific studies centered on near-death experiences. I jumped at the chance. It was exhilarating to see science start to tackle questions that had long been viewed only through a spiritual lens. Throughout this entire journey, I've tried to keep a level head. I definitely didn't want to be labeled as some sort of guru or the ultimate authority on everything. I just aimed to blend my critical thinking with a newfound openness to the mysteries around us. When I think back, it's clear that my near-death experience was a turning point for me. I transitioned from a skeptical teacher into someone who welcomes life's mysteries, always eager to learn, absorb, and grow. Today, as I sit in my cozy home office, surrounded by cherished books, heartfelt letters from students, and countless memories, I find myself reflecting on the incredible voyage that my near-death experience has been. Each day is a blessing. Every moment holds the potential for greater understanding and growth. It's quite astonishing to think how much time has flown by since that pivotal moment in the surgical room. It truly transformed everything for me. You know, one of the biggest things I took away from that experience is just how incredibly rich and mysterious life really is. That feeling of connection to something larger wasn't just a fleeting thought or a trick of my mind. It was genuinely real. I can still feel the earth under my feet, reminding me that my perspective on existence has shifted fundamentally. I came to realize that death doesn't signify the end of life as we know it. It's more like a transformation, an evolution into another form of existence. Sure, I still have my moments of fear regarding death. After all, I'm only human. But that fear doesn't hold me back anymore. Instead, it drives me to embrace every single day, cherishing the little moments. Another vital lesson I learned is the significance of keeping an open mind. For far too long, my skepticism kept me in a box, limiting my ability to experience the beauty around me. Now I see the necessity of balancing critical thinking with an openness to life's mysteries. Science and spirituality, they're not adversaries. They both represent different avenues in our quest for truth, and it's crucial that they coexist. Love and compassion emerged as key themes as well. The incredible wave of love I felt during my near-death experience isn't just an afterlife phenomenon. It's something we can nurture and share daily. I consciously bring this awareness into my life, whether I'm interacting with students, spending time with family, or even engaging with strangers. It's fascinating how a small act of kindness can ripple out, spreading positivity far and wide. I've also come to appreciate the intricate web of interconnectedness that binds us all. We aren't solitary beings. Rather, we're part of a vast network of relationships and energies. Every thought, every action we take has a ripple effect. This realization has made me more mindful of my choices and how I navigate through life. Lastly, my experience made me reconsider what consciousness really is. It's far more expansive and intricate than the workings of our physical brains. This revelation opened up a whole new realm of possibilities, challenging many of my previous understandings about the human mind. I finally started sharing my story after keeping it to myself for years, fearing judgment. But sharing turned out to be liberating. I discovered countless others had similar experiences, and there's something comforting about creating safe spaces for these conversations. At 58, I find myself deeply connected to life and the people around me, feeling more vibrant than ever. The journey to this point hasn't been a walk in the park. There were times filled with uncertainty and fear, moments when I doubted everything. Yet every hurdle I encountered pushed me to learn more about myself and the universe. My near-death experience? I see it as a transformative gift rather than just a traumatic event. It reshaped my entire path and opened doors to help others discover meaning in their own stories. If you're reading this and have gone through something similar, remember, you are not alone. Your feelings matter and your experiences are significant. Don't shy away from delving into them, questioning them, or even sharing them with others. And for those who haven't faced such profound experiences, my advice is simple. Keep your heart and mind open. The universe holds wonders and mysteries beyond our current understanding, and that's truly exciting. As I pen these reflections, I'm filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the journey I've taken, the lessons I've learned, and everyone who has influenced my growth along the way. I'm thankful for this chance to share my story in hopes it might offer comfort, inspiration, or even just a new perspective to someone else. Life is an extraordinary adventure, teeming with enigmas and beautiful surprises. Embrace it wholeheartedly, remain curious, and never stop growing.